It asked him a question about his background, and he mentioned, "Oh yeah, I relocated because of the fire," and it just kept going. That's how normal AI. And I'm like, "What? That isn't right." Like a human would be like, "Wait, what? You were in a fire?" So we built in stuff to be able to specifically train it for that. It could actually be like, "You just mentioned you were in a fire. Like, what happened?" And so really trying to think through how humans work. So it's almost like very
Yeah.
interesting because you're studying what is all intuitive for us, but figuring out how to bring that to AI.
Welcome to Founder Fridays, where we sit down with builders who've been in the trenches to talk shop, product, design, and real lessons no one puts on a slide deck. I'm Shivani Sharma, and I lead growth engineering at Notion. Today, I'm joined by Scott Shumaker, co-founder of Persona AI. Scott's a serial founder and a product-focused tech executive with over 20 years of experience building consumer technology, from AAA console games to scaling engineering orgs at Google, Credit Karma, and Microsoft. Now he's back in founder mode, building expressive video agents designed to feel as compelling as interacting with a human. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Shivani, glad to be here.
Let's start by understanding the founder journey. Let's rewind a little bit and ground in your personal story. What sparked the shift from Microsoft VP to starting Persona AI?
That's a great question. I actually really liked Microsoft, but I was a startup founder in the past, and I always felt like I had one more good startup in me, And then, when AI came in, we got to see it very early at Microsoft because the relationship with OpenAI. I just knew it was going to change everything, the kind of software we build, how we build software, and I just got that itch to build again. Like that's really what it came down to. I kind of imagined retiring at Microsoft and spending the next 20 years there, but I just, once I learned about it, once I got a taste of it, I was like, spend every evening, I was working from like, get my kids to bed, I work for 3 hours, learning about deep learning, building prototypes. This is very early. ChatGPT finally just came out. And my wife's like, you're just so into this. Like, she's like, you got like, it's clear that there's your heart's in this now. Like your heart is building again. And she's really supportive. And so that's really kind of like, I mean, I guess one more little subtle note, like the origin for the idea. My daughter asked me to make her an AI friend. I was like, oh, this is a cool little weekend project. I can try building it. And I realized it's really hard. It's hard to actually build something that kind of knows you, it remembers you, it has a sense of time and place. So I was like, okay, this is more than a weekend. I kind of shelved it. And then a few months later, my daughter was like, hey, and when you make me that AI friend, Daddy, make sure to give it a face. And I'm like, because this, it's much more engaging to talk to someone who has a face. She was like 7 at the time. Like that was really like an insightful thought, and that's what really sparked the idea for it, actually. Um, you know,
And so, like, how did the timing line up for you and Andy Gavin, your co-founder for Persona, like to come together at this
It's
time?
great. I mean, it's a great question. So I worked for him back in the day at Naughty Dog, I mean, 20 plus years ago, and we became really good friends. And then he convinced me to leave my role there, and we did a startup together, which we sold to Fox News Corp, basically in MySpace in the heyday of MySpace. And then our paths diverged, but we stayed friends. I
Hmm.
was, leaving Microsoft in the last few years. Andy has been like, I would say he was like not semi-retirement, but he was really doing a lot of board work, consulting work. He's had a very, very successful career. And so I kind of convinced him to like, you know, jump into something full time again. He got excited enough about the idea that we decided to do it together.
And how did your experience in games influence how you think about AI experience generally?
I think there's a few different aspects to that. I think, and I've done, of course, games, and I've done, SaaS, I've done a lot of things. I think the games are, if you look at a great game, it's not a single element that makes the game great. You look at like Naughty Dog made these really, meaningful, powerful cultural touchstones, and they had great, technology, they had great art, they had great design, they had great sound, and really the whole was greater than some of its parts. Like they all came together to make this alchemy that would make this an amazing experience. And we thought about AI, and especially AI with you're interacting with and engaging with. We really approached it from that angle of like, what would it take to make an AI that is actually really engaging? And we thought about the elements that would make that possible, which we believe to be, we have, of course, video agents. We have our sort of state-of-the-art generative video tech. It's very emotionally expressive. We also thought a lot about the other aspects that make things engaging of a human. So, a lot of we've been focusing on is autonomous AI, where the agent can run a conversation with another human being. And so that's really thinking through like, what does that mean to have, like, how do you, the agent needs to accomplish something with another human who's maybe not fully aligned. How do you think through like, what are all the things that could go wrong? How do they keep the human engaged the whole time? Like there's a lot of that thinking of like, and so we did a lot of thinking about the same way we thought about making games, like deep interactivity. Like how do you in games, how do you keep a person just completely immersed in the experience? So we really took that same approach, and so it was very multidisciplinary. Even how we built the team. We have half the team is based in Los Angeles, half of it's here. The LA team, we got a bunch of folks who came from film or game backgrounds, and that were really, really senior in those roles. So really think through that, bring the sort of artistic aspect into the development process.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, digging into more about what you're actually building now at Persona, what would you say is the hardest part of making the AI interactions compelling?
So, in our specific use case, right? Like we decided not to necessarily focus on just like a social product, right? Like, or a product that or like a consumer entertainment product. We thought about like how do we actually help them do useful things. And so in that there's this like natural balance between what it wants to accomplish and what the human's interested in. And so there's a lot of subtlety to like how do you get the entire like the feel so it feels natural. It can still get its job done. So it doesn't feel robotic,
Hmm.
but it also can stay on track, so that it responds the right kind of way emotionally and at the right moments in time. So it has the right sort of so some of that's timing, some of that's just like its overall behavior. So that was very, very like complicated and subtle. And honestly, like, I don't think anyone else has done anything quite like that yet either. So it was a lot of it was just pure R&D. On the visual side, like, I mean, we kind of are. I think we are also on the edge where we have to basically do R&D and how do we make. Okay, we have cutting edge game technology, great, but how do you actually have AI you know, drive visuals? And that was also a bunch of like novel R&D that we had to do. So those are both really hard, and honestly, they're both still hard. But I think that like that the difference maybe in the way we've approached it, like the fact that we thought about these two elements holistically has let us build something that's really different than
Hmm.
what else is out there because of that.
And how do you think about designing for trust, engagement, and emotional connection?
Great question. Um, I mean, there's a couple things we thought about pretty early on, and some of them are actually maybe I would say are you wouldn't necessarily expect. So, for example, one choice we made early on was that we decided to not go with completely hyper realistic avatars, and the reason is because we didn't want to trick you, and so you have this
Mm.
all you I'm sure everyone listening has had this experience where they get a phone call, someone starts talking to them, and they realize it's a robocall. It's infuriating. You're like more mad than because you thought it
Hmm.
was pretending it was something it wasn't going to be in any conversation, making someone like they're actually feeling heard and feeling being listened to.
Hmm.
And and not in a fake way, but like being able to actually properly reflect that. We had to spend a bunch of work training models to be able to do a good job with emotions and engagement and reflection. We almost went through like great human conversations and thought about, okay, this conversation we had was really engaging. What were all the things that went through the person's mind to make this conversation engaging? Like, okay, well, they specifically mentioned point in common. Okay, well, that's a little hard to do with AI, but they specifically mentioned something they knew about this aspect, or they reflected in this way, or they noticed something. The person said something surprising, and they asked about it. Like if you normal AI, my co-founder, unfortunately, his house was affected by the Palisades fire, and so he was testing out one of our early agents, and he mentioned it asked him a question about his background, and he mentioned, oh yeah, I relocated because of the fire, and it just kept going. That's how normal AI. And I'm like, well, that isn't right. Like a human would be like, wait, what? You were in a fire? So we built in stuff to be able to specifically train it for that. It could actually be like, you just
Mm.
mentioned you were in a fire. Like, what happened? And so really trying to think through how humans work. So it's almost like very
Yeah.
interesting because you're studying what is all intuitive for us, but figuring out how to bring that to AI.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, you've also written about the pace of AI and the bets founders need to make. Let's shift gears and talk about the technical side of the
Sure.
things. So, my first question here is you've argued teams shouldn't overinvest in latency, plumbing, or even model training since they'll improve for free. Uh, what will stay hard, though?
Well, I think across maybe I'll say those things. I said overinvest. You might need to make some investments there. We spend a bunch of time on latency, but we're a very latency sensitive app. But the truth is the pace of technology at the frontier labs and the trickle down to open source is so intense. And by the way, it's so capital intensive. And nowadays, like even you see universities aren't doing model research anymore. They're doing like prompt research because they can't afford to. Like, you need billions of dollars to do that. So you can just expect that will get better. The models will get faster, they'll get cheaper, they'll get better. Like that's going to happen. If unless you work at OpenAI, if you do nothing, that will happen. Like it's like Moore's law, basically. We had CPUs doubling, now we're going to have models just getting better year over year. And so,
Hmm.
what stays hard, right? What really is hard, I think, is really, if I go back to why we build AI. I mean, I think that the goal of AI, for in my mind, is to basically unlock human potential. It's like to make humans better. Now, it may not be making an individual human better, making a group of humans better, humanity better, but that really comes down to how does AI help you with more and more things? It's core, right? And I think sure Notion is the same way, right? And so if you think about that sort of process or that growth, really the way I always thought, the way I measure progress mentally is I think about the human in the loop. Like, how small is that loop? So the loop is very small. For a
Hmm.
given task, you'd have to go back and forth to AI multiple times. What's happened though? The models have gotten better. The loop's gotten bigger. We've started to see things like, agent be, they've gotten tool use. They can do stuff on the internet, search on the web. And then they've started to do things like you look at like Claude Code or GPT Agent. They can actually spend more and more time being autonomous. And I think that that increasing the size of that loop, in your business, in your area, is pretty much the most important thing. It's gonna, and it's as long as you, like, the expectation is hard, but you have to keep pushing on it. But as long as you keep staying, for your business, staying ahead on that curve, and you can very easily because you have unique assets as a business, or unique domain. If you just keep pushing on that loop, making that loop bigger and bigger and bigger, basically unlocking human more and more human potential. That's going to keep being hard, like because you'll be at the edge of what you have to do,
Hmm.
and it's increasing amounts of value for your customers.
Very interesting. And how do you prioritize which problems to solve first in the fast-moving ecosystem?
Traditionally, you always are trying to do some mixture of like the immediate burning issues that I know our customers are experiencing and some like maybe Horizon 2 or Horizon 3 type bets. I think the one thing that's changed because the ecosystem is moving so fast, it's very hard to basically predict too far out into the future. And so, like,
Hmm.
I think that what it is compressed timescales. You see this even in enterprise, like enterprise deals. A lot of customers are not signing up for like 3-year contracts anymore. They're signing up for 1-year contracts. So they not don't know where stuff's going to be. But like, shorten that horizon. Like, like don't undertake a giant multi-year project, or and try and take was it something you might have been like, okay, we can do this in 3 quarters. You should do it in a quarter or 2 quarters. You got to get that shorter because I think that otherwise the chances are higher than ever that you arrive and when you arrive at the destination, what you built is no longer needed. And that is like definitely the case now.
I'd like to shift gears and talk about before Persona. You held senior roles at Google, Credit Karma, and Microsoft. I'd love to zoom out and connect those lessons to what you're building now. So, how did leading Google, Credit Karma, and Microsoft shape how you lead now?
I think that the thing that you like learn at when you run big organizations, you kind of learn how to run things. You learn how to scale things really well and run things at scale. So I think it's helpful to have the whole picture of what process or how to operate teams looks like at different stages of organization. But you can see that shift where like, okay, I have like 30 people. Oh, now I have 60 people. I'm like, you have to change how things work. How do I structure my team now?
Yeah.
We're small enough now that we're flat. We're basically, I mean, it's like me and my co-founder, so it's basically flat. Not for much longer probably, but like we're still flat. I think the other thing that was really helpful was just seeing things done well. It doesn't mean that like Google, the engineering excellence was really really high. It doesn't mean that
Hmm.
you would necessarily apply that like that the way they did things to other companies and would not be a good fit, but the principles that are really useful. At Microsoft, they're incredibly good at like the manager core was really really good. They had great managers, and they were incredibly good with enterprise sales. Credit Karma was exciting for me because it was my first time as a VP of engineering, and I was learning as the company was learning at the same time. So it was like they were in hypergrowth, and it was a crazy journey. And that was, and I think it really helped me on the, think through business more holistically.
And you mentioned earlier about advising other founders. What would you say are things about scaling engineering orgs that some of these founders overlook?
Some founder engineers, they don't get comfortable with telling people what to do. As the best way to put it, like there's a degree of like learning
Hmm.
how to basically not just like just say, can you do this, but to just set expectations and have things done and make hard decisions that some founders struggle with. There are other ones who, um, I would say that they maybe have the reverse problem where they like, they like, they make assumptions that don't scale. Like, so for example, they assume that like things will move just as fast as they did when we were 10 people, when I'm 50 people, or they should be 5 times faster, without investing in the systems to make that actually the case. So you see that like the alternate side where there's like either they have like they keep the same expectations when they're bigger, which they shouldn't, or they have unrealistic expectations when they get bigger. So there's that expectation mismatch. A lot of folks have trouble delegating. That's a common pattern. Like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm running an org now. Like I have 80 people in this org. Like you know, I do need to delegate, but how do I learn to delegate and also still get visibility? Because like you can't fully, you have to basically like still be the person operating. So being
Yeah,
ready for the
very
changes,
true.
anticipating them, and getting ahead of them is like basically where people tend to. And there's lots of places where there's traps. You get traps along the way.
And how would you balance speed with quality in the early stage AI products?
So I think it depends on the kind of company you want to be. Some startups and some products, the way the product's aligned, you actually have to have a really high quality model. The thing has to work really, really well. I think in some spaces, you kind of fake it till you make it. You get it out there with a customer, you quickly iterate on it and you improve it. And I think those are both viable paths, honestly. It depends on the business you're in. So um, a lot of folks like there's a lot of cases where just any AI that works decently well is going to be a massive improvement on the existing workflow that people have today. I don't know. And so I think that if you're a founder in that space, you should move as fast as possible. I think that there is a degree of like, as you start getting customers on and as you start getting traction, you have to think carefully about how do I not break the customers that I have there and what I put in place there, to make sure that happens. But like speed is also like it becomes really paramount because if you're just sprinkling on existing business, there's not the moat isn't as hot, is as deep. So you have to basically grow really rapidly so that you basically can like you get like the moat becomes like relationships you have, institutional knowledge of the industry, existing logos, etc. If you have deep tech, you may have a moat on technology, and so you can spend a little more time. You can, in theory, spend a little more time making sure the quality's there.
Let's pop the hood and see how you actually run Persona AI. What tools does the Persona team rely on most?
I'd say there's a few. Obviously, like we use Slack a ton. Um, we use Linear for tracking, and we use Notion a lot. Almost all of our documentation, our actual project roll-ups, our specs, all that stuff is in Notion. We use a lot of the we actually we were just saying this week we have a new sort of dashboard we've created in Notion for different projects that we like have that have like different tables in them that show like the high level work streams, what's going on, and like key issues. We have a bunch of customers that we're actively working with right now. So, it's really a high level view. And I think, Linear is great. Like we use it as our underlying task tracker for like tickets, but it's like very low level. And so having this sort of high level view of these sort of major milestones and features is really, really powerful. I say those are three. And then Claude Code. I mean, Cloud Code's insane. So I mean, folks have used it. I'm
Mhm.
sure it's awesome. People have tried it. It's like if you haven't tried it and you're a founder, you got to get your dev team to start using it. It's like a huge lift in lots of ways if you use it right. And our teams just embraced it. So we're finding a lot of it's been incredibly helpful in doing a lot of things. Actually, I'm excited to try out Notion's new agent feature. We haven't tried it yet. It just launched.
Yeah.
So, but having that like AI that sort of has aware of your code base, or maybe in Notion's case, aware of all your docs and can do things is incredibly powerful.
Hmm.
And it's the problem with ChatGPT. GPT-5 is amazing in a lot of ways, but the round trip and the context built is not there. And so there's a lot of that, like where you're like going back to that and coming back and reestablishing context every time. I think it's really powerful to have that integrated into your tool.
Any other workflows or templates in Notions that other founders could borrow from what you're doing at Persona?
There's a lot of nice features, like even just the simple things like the collapsible stuff is really valuable. Is like that small thing is actually extremely valuable in any kind of large spec. And the collaboration, of course, is top notch also. Another thing we do a lot of is we have a lot of mermaid diagrams actually. So it turns out that you can render mermaid, and if you folks don't know this, Notion can render mermaid diagrams, and it's really nice. And so we have Claude generate mermaid diagrams for us, and we put them in for Notion for all our tech specs. It's really, really powerful. Um,
All right, we're almost at the end. We'll wrap up with our advice block to other
that's good.
founders. If you had to start Persona AI again today, what's one thing you would do differently?
Well, today is different because the world is so different. I think that's like the world has shifted a lot in the last. We started this. I mean, really, it was like 2 years ago. So the world has shifted a ton, right? I mean, I think that the pace, like when we started, no one knew how to make money with AI. Like only OpenAI was really out. Now everyone is like making money with AI really rapidly. So that there's just been incredible adoption, revenue growth everywhere. So that may change the kind of startup you would just even consider, given where the rate of pace of technology and really the sort of where we are in the adoption curve of AI. I think that surprised everyone.
Hmm.
Like the level of adoption we've seen from enterprises has been crazy. Great as a founder, but crazy. So I think I would have probably pushed on enterprise first. I think the thing though I probably alluded to this a little bit is that there's this inherent choice between quality and speed. And when we were
Hmm.
moving really fast, but we did really deep foundational R&D also, and I probably would have like knowing if I knew how fast technology was moving, I probably would have cut some corners on the quality and cut scope a little bit and moved faster. I mean, we're in a great place today, but like we probably could have had something launched 6 months earlier, and that would have been great to also have. But I would say the number one thing would be just move even faster and narrow a little bit more. Even if you're focusing on a deep tech startup, like I think there's value in that because the with this pace of technology, you have to believe that any technical moat you have won't be that durable for that long. Like maybe in the past you'd have a deep technical moat and be durable for 5 years. Now it might be durable for 2 years. And so you really have to think carefully about like quickly going from that to a more durable moat, whether that's brand or network effect or something else, or just customers or whatever it is. Like just like the users, like data that proprietary data, you have to move to that fairly quickly. And I say that's the big lesson I think that everyone needs to consider is that it's not like the cloud rush or the mobile rush is much, much faster, you know.
All right. So Scott, it was great chatting with you today. Three main takeaways for me was it was interesting to learn about your challenges about the novel R&D around creating visuals, and like also the interesting balance of not making it hyper realistic to like not trick you and but still have the authenticity and the engagement. That was really interesting. And also the piece about building rapport versus just like echoing back what you just said, and so those nuances of engaging in conversations that you have with when you're human to human, and kind of making that also work with AI. And then I really like what you said about making the loop bigger. It's about unlocking human potential. A lot of folks are talking about how AI is going to replace all of us, but I was like, no, like it's kind of like, when we started doing more and more powerful like computation and automation, there were a certain set of jobs that were, people don't have to do anymore, but now there's a new set of jobs that people can do. So those are really great nuggets that you talked to us today about. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for taking the time, Scott.
Excellent. Great. Thanks again, Shivani. Appreciate it.